Hello, Grand Lakers. This is Sam down at the Grand Lake Sportscenter, and we're here to do another Rodcast and hopefully share a little bit of history around the lake. And I have a special guest today. His name is Brent Sanders, and he knows a little bit about what happened way back from his family. And we're going to talk about some of the things he knows, and I've got a couple of things that I just remembered that I wanted to share with everybody too. So I'm going to turn it over to Brent. He's got something that's very, very interesting that a lot of you fishermen will be able to understand what he's talking about. There you go.
Okay, glad to be here. Glad to be invited here on this. I've tried to tell you some things in the past that I can recall. One thing is how things have changed the way society looks at issues uh, like tobacco. When I was a young person, uh, just young people could go buy cigarettes. There's no problem with that. And here at the Sportscenter, there was a woman that worked here for a couple of years that was a friend of mine's mother, and we've laughed about the fact that on the way home, if she needed a pack of cigarettes, she just give him 50 cents and go in the store and buy it. He wasn't old enough to drive a car, but he could buy cigarettes. And now, that's unheard of. So that's something that I've seen change, and it's not necessarily in the Grove area, but just in society itself.
Well, people are used to walk around all over around Grove, smoking. It was okay. You used to smoke on airplanes, when you went somewhere. And I know when I took over the store from my dad 20 years ago, I redid the fishing department, and when I tore down all those old gondolas and put up all those new shelves and stuff, I swear we filled up a big coffee can full of cigarette butts. Back in the day, people that put them out on the floor, and they would sweep up at the end of the night. And I guess all those years of sweeping, those cigarette butts got trapped up underneath those counters. And when we tore the counters down, there they were. So you're right. It's a lot different now.
Yeah. As a young person, we'd go visit my grandparents, and my grandpa, he would roll his own cigarettes, and he'd have a big Smith overalls on, and he'd have his Prince Albert can and his papers in there, and he'd sit there and roll one and smoke a cigarette, and everybody'd be sitting around, and there would just be layers of smoke in the house, and it was just normal. That's just life back then. And I've got an uncle. Some people might know him, Joe Carey. Do you remember Joe? He was a postmaster at Grove for years. Joe Carey.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
I went over if that would be my uncle, and I seen him the other day, and I asked him. I said, he's 92, and I said, how long you been smoking? He said, well, I was smoking when I was still at home, so that would be over 70 years, and he still smokes a pack a day to this day, and he's 92. So.
Wow. Yeah, isn't that funny how some people don't get affected?
It doesn't seem to bother him. I don't know.
Now, I mean, you can still roll your own, but you got to have one of them little cards that says it's okay, So, that's how much times have changed, that we've come a long ways,
Yeah, the difference in opinion on smoking, and like drinking alcohol, how it's changed. Uh, there's a guy, and his name's Bob. I won't say his last name, but he lives down at Butler. The story is that he was out drinking one night, and he turned his pickup over right down here by the Ridge Runner car wash.
Okay.
And the Blue Note Lounge was uptown. He just got out of his vehicle, left it in the ditch, and walked up to the Blue Note and was sitting in there drinking. Well, Bob Hughes was the sheriff in the area, and he drove by and he seen Bob's truck sitting in the ditch. He knew who owned it, and he knew where he was at, because he drove up to the Blue Note and told Bob, he said, you need to go get your truck out of the ditch. So times has changed there now.
So that was it. Just go get it.
Yeah, just go get it.
No ticket, no tow truck. I mean, wow.
No jail time.
Okay, that's crazy.
So that kind of stuff has changed. And then I brought a book that shows a picture of a club. It was called the Yuck Club. Got to go back a long time, but people that have been around here, it have to go back 30 or 40 years. But the Yuck Club was an establishment, and it used to sit right down here by the Sonic, where the Sonic is now. And you could go in there and you could dine, drink, and dance. But of all things, in the back rooms, there was gambling. It was shady. You didn't do that. But nowadays, gambling is everywhere. And
Just drive down to across the bridge, any bridge, and you're there at a casino.
but it's those. There's three different things there. How the society has looked at it one way back in the past, and how it looks at it now. So it's been interesting to see how that's transpired in my lifetime.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
I'm not saying good, bad, or otherwise, but it's definitely changed. How
It,
things are.
it has. Well, you used to be able to walk in and buy model glue to build your models. Well, back then we didn't think about sniffing glue. Anybody can buy it. Now you got to be 21 years old. You got to show an ID to buy glue.
Yeah, but that's just some of the things that struck me as I've lived to see how things have changed, and the perspective that society puts on them.
So
But it's not limited just to Grove. It's pretty much everywhere.
everywhere it is. So you know a little bit about something over in Bernice.
Well, yeah, we were talking about that. My grandpa, the one that rolled his own cigarettes, one of his jobs right before the lake went in, which was in 39 and 40. One of his jobs was to go over and dig up graves because they were going to be underwater and moved them. And most of it was by hand. That was one of his jobs back in that day, was to do that. And we were talking about things in the past. That was before my time, but uh, he talked about that some.
So I wonder if it was hard to find helpers doing that.
I don't know.
You know, that's not
30,
something you do every day.
that was in 39. Well, it had been before 39, so they were probably needing any kind of job they could, in the 30s. So that was something that until you lived it, I guess you wouldn't know.
So with all this new sonar that we have now, I mean, I have people tell me all the time over in the Bernice area, they can still see the old town underneath. They can still see some of the streets. They can still see some of the fence posts from the barbed wire fences. And there's some structure that's still standing down there. So that's something pretty cool about what we can do today with sonar. But if anybody's ever in that area and you have that live scope or active target, you turn it on and see if you can see down there. I've seen some really good video footage of the roads still down there. So might want to look into that.
Let me ask you a question. I don't know how long you've been here, but I know growing up too, it was common every year pretty much for the lake to freeze over. And the lake hasn't been freezing over, not like in the past. I don't know the reasons for that. I guess it's obviously not as cold as it used to be. But do you remember the lake freezing over?
I remember many times the lake freezing over, and in the last years, I mean, we have really mild winters. I mean, we just unless we've had a couple of years where it got extremely cold and it was real windy, and it didn't freeze completely all the way across, but around the docks, I mean, they fight that ice when it gets around those docks and their boats are in there, so it's a real nightmare. So it's kind of good that it doesn't freeze all the way across anymore. But I can remember over off of Elk River many years ago that people would be out there on their four-wheelers driving around on the ice, and I'm like, wow, you'd see some watery areas where that ice was thin, and you just wondered how nobody ever fell in.
Yeah, I never heard anybody dying from it. But yeah, I've heard of people with three wheelers. That's going way back, but riding their three wheelers out on the ice. You
Yep.
know, they haven't been able to do that in quite a few years.
I have uh, I have a house over on State Park Road, and it was built in 1901. I still own it, but we didn't know much about the house when we bought it, except that it had fiberboard on the walls. There was no sheetrock, and it had wallpaper over it. And when we bought the house, I mean, the first thing that wallpaper would it'd make you dizzy walking through that house. It was crazy looking stuff. So the wife says, "We got to get rid of all that." So I tore all that fiberboard down off of the walls, and underneath that fiberboard, it was lap and groove siding, and then on it was arithmetic was written all over it, and little carvings of people's initials, love so and so, and I couldn't quite understand why all that was underneath like that, but we ended up sheetrocking the whole house, and a 2x4 back then was a 2x4, and a 2x6 was a 2x6, and they were solid oak. And I can remember trying to sheetrock that house, having to drill holes just to get a screw started so I could get the sheetrock to hang on the wall. And I was doing a job for a guy down in Xena one time, and we got to talking, and he'd been around a long time, and he said that I said, yeah, this house that I've got, I told him what I'd been through with it, and he goes, well, which house is it? And I told him which one it was, and he goes, that was the old Xena schoolhouse. And I go, you're kidding. And I said, and he goes, no. He goes, I was the school teacher in that schoolhouse. And I said, you're kidding. And he goes, no. And he goes, as a matter of fact, I got something for you. And I was finishing up a big job for this guy, and I was packing up my tools. And he came out of the house with the sign that hung on the front of that school from way back. And we still have that sign to this day. So, but it was, and the house has been added on to many times since then. But that was what are the odds of that? So anyway, there's been so many changes in the Grove area. It's
Yeah.
just now you remember the old bridge and
Yeah, I remember the old bridge. I've got a picture of my dad sitting, standing on it. I guess he was probably about 19, but somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah, the old sailboat bridge. It was two lane,
yeah,
two lane across it.
yeah. Now look at what we have over there now.
Yeah,
It's amazing. So I don't know if a lot of people know, but the sailboat bridge, inside that bridge is hollow. You can walk from one side to the other, and there's cables, steel cables that run through the inside of that thing. And they hire contractors to come in here every so often, and they have to walk through that tunnel, and they tap on those cables to check for rust to make sure that they're still really strong. And I know I usually do it in the spring. And I've talked to a couple of these guys when they're in town. They come in here and get fish and stuff. And they always seem to plan on doing this when the white bass are rutted. So it's funny. They'll spend 7 or 8 hours in that bridge doing their job, and then they get out of there and they're on the lake, catching those white bass. So they check it. But I thought that was pretty interesting that you can get inside that thing.
yeah,
Doesn't look like it.
yeah. To speak on that, my grandpa Sanders, he owned land right there where Sailboat Bridge starts at. He had some river bottom land, and there was a barn there. And when they built the bridge and the lake was going to go in, they bought him out, and he had to move, so he moved out east to Grove. Anyway, my dad cut that barn in two and hauled it from Sailboat Bridge to 5 miles east of Grove and reconstructed it, and the barn is still standing there. It's probably getting close to 100 years old, but it would have been underwater if they hadn't cut that and moved that.
Wow. So is it still in the family, the barn?
Yes, yeah, I own the property it sits on.
Okay.
Matter of fact, my daughter Susie, that's gonna right down there where she lives, right by it. But yeah, the barn is still standing.
So have you ever taken any old pieces of wood out of it or anything to make something out of it or?
You know, No, I haven't, but yeah, that'd be some old barnwood.
Can you still walk inside it?
Oh yeah, it's got a loft.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, sometimes
Does it leak when it rains?
some.
Some, but it's still pretty good.
Still good shape.
Okay,
Still
all
good
right.
shape. And they hauled it on a wagon. Most people would just left it there to get covered up, but they uh, they moved it from. That's probably about 12 miles on by wagon.
That was a feat to move something like
Yeah.
that. And back then, a lot of that wood was from out of the mills,
Hmm.
so it wasn't real smooth like we have now. It was rough when they built something like that.
Yep.
So, and it lasts longer than this stuff we have now in the weather.
Yeah, and driving nails in that oak because it's all oak. It wasn't pine. And yeah, that's when you leave there, Sailboat Bridge, and you're coming into Grove, you go by Cary Bay. Well, Cary Bay was some of my mother's family. Uh, Matter of fact, she wrote a book called Winds of Cary Bay. But some of her family had Cary Ferry before the lake went in. They had to cross the river over there, and they called it the Cary Ferry. So, yeah, I've got some family ties here go way back.
So I know my dad told me one time that they used to have the old coffee cup cafe up here, which went way back in there. I mean, I was in there when I'd come down and see my grandparents in the summer and go in there, and you open the door and it was just full of smoke. And you go in there and we'd get breakfast or lunch or whenever time it was that we were in town. And at one time, before they had to redo a lot of the street work down there up there. They had some problems, and there used to be some gas tanks that they dug up that were underground, and it ended up being a big deal that the EPA came in and they had to completely dig out all the tanks, all the dirt, and refill it with clean material and put it all back in. And I know in front of the Grand Lake Sports Center, I've got a picture that people can come in and see. We used to have gas pumps out by the front door because this was a Chrysler dealership. And I know when they did the downtown revitalization that they just kept praying they wouldn't hit one of those tanks while they were digging and have to go through all that. So they never did. So they got pretty lucky on that. But yeah, a lot of things are a lot different now.
Do you remember the Coffee Cup Cafe? How they spelled that? Because it was three K's. If I recall right, it was three K's.
Yes.
And I had a friend that played football up at Missouri Southern, and he brought one of these fellow football players to Grove one day, and he's black. And they're pulling into Grove, and the guy sees this sign that says KKK Cafe on it, and he was going, "Wait a minute, what's going on?"
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So that was a funny story.
Well, they used to have where the radio station is. That used to be a bank, and it was owned by the Buzzards, and they helped finance my grandpa to help get him started in this whole area with everything. The Buzzards helped a lot of people. Yeah, they helped a lot of people in this town. And I know across the street there's that two-story building over there. That's a marijuana building now.
Yeah, it used to be the Star Cafe.
There you go. Okay.
I think his name was Tillman Starr had that.
So anyway, I know at one time they had an argument out there on the sidewalk, and somebody got shot right there on that corner down there. So, and then they had the remember the drugstore.
Yeah.
What was
Beecham?
it? Beecham. Yeah, Beecham. My sister worked in there, and that was a real soda fountain bar. I mean, that was the real deal. You'd go in there, and you'd have the old glasses that were real tall and the straw. And
Eugene Beecham was his name.
yeah, he had a farm back here over by where they built the hospital. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that's gone on around here, and we're always looking forward to people coming in. If you have any ideas or anything that you want to talk about, we'd love to be able to do a show with you. And I was just so welcome that somebody told me about you and some of the things that you knew about out there.
I've been here since '56. I was born in Grove.
So you've seen a lot of changes.
Things, yeah.
So have you ever seen a taxi cab company ever make it here?
I don't suppose.
I know several people have tried to do a taxi cab, but it never works. I don't even know if they have an Uber here, do they? I'm not for sure if they do or not, But anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching our podcast, Grand Lake Sports Center Rodcast, and I appreciate our guests today. And if you ever have any ideas about something you'd like to do with the show, please give us a call, and we'll put something together like we just did today. We appreciate you watching, and you all have a blessed day.